everyone, welcome back to the Rheo Moon Oracle. I'm Rheo, and today I wanted to start a new series. We're going to do a tarot discovery series, and I'm going to go through all 78 cards of a typical tarot deck and do some exploration on it, both for my knowledge and to build that up, and I thought it'd be a really interesting thing to share as well, and provide that knowledge outward as well to everybody else. So we're starting with the Major Arcana, and we'll work through the different suits after that. So today we're starting with card 0, card 1, or card 22, depending on how you look at it, the full card. So got a couple cards here. I've pulled the full card from some of my different tarot decks, and we're going to take a look at it today, compare it to the typical Rider Waite imagery, and work through that symbology and figure out really in depth what the full card means. So the full card in tarot, like I said, can be either card 0 or card 22, which is the end of the Major Arcana. So depending on how you read it, or depending on the interpretations from different tarot decks from different readers and creators, you can read the card either way. It could be the beginning of the journey or the end of the journey. And that's what the Major Arcana typically represents in tarot, is the journey of life, the journey through exploration, through you're going through your life and figuring out yourself. So that's why the full kind of can be that beginning or that end card, because it's could be the beginning of the journey, which is usually my interpretation of it, or it could be at the end when you restart that life and rebirth process. Okay, so I have a book that I've been working on and doing research through. This is the Learning the Tarot, one card at a time. I don't know who created it, but it's been a good resource as I start looking through the different cards, and gives me an opportunity to write about their keywords, their interpretations, their meanings to me, and reversals. So it's just a good place to like have all my notes for. So again, like I said, I pulled 4 cards today from the different tarot decks I have. I have about 7 tarot decks, I believe. So I didn't pull all of them, but I found ones that were interesting and different, and that had different symbology from each other, and in comparison to the typical Rider Waite tarot deck as well. So I'll show you those ones now. The first one I pulled is the full card from the Halloween Tarot. And I'll insert, as I start talking about them, I'll insert pictures that are really close and in-depth so you can see all the details of each card. So that one's from the Halloween Tarot. This one is from the Seers Tarot. And we have the Santa Muerte deck. Okay. And then we have the Wild Unknown deck. Okay. So keywords for the full that you'll see most typically is going to be beginnings, innocence, could be naive, that wonder, that curiosity, generally going to be like a leap of faith, a new beginning, having faith in the future, being carefree, joyful. Sometimes it's blind faith, not just that like leap of faith, but that just blind faith. Could be naivety, venture, excitement, and in a normal deck of cards that you'd see, which is based off the tarot initially, it'd be like that wild card, that one that just shows up out of nowhere. Again, it's the card number 0. It's kind of that end or beginning, or neither sometimes, and that like full process, that coming full circle. So in the typical Rider Waite, I'll post a picture of this one too so you can see the imagery. You have the what looks like a young man, but can be more gender neutral, standing on a cliff about to walk off. You see a little white dog kind of behind their feet right there, barking at them. Whether they're trying to show awareness or there's excitement from that little dog is up for debate, depending on how you read it as well. That person is holding a satchel over their shoulder, and you can see that they're going on a journey. Something I think of notes too is the person is looking up. They are not looking at their feet in front of them, and the fact that they're about to walk off of a cliff, which I think is interesting. So that's kind of lending to that like blind faith aspect, that naivety piece as well. The person also has a flower in their other hand that is not carrying the satchel, and has that little bit of what's the word I want to use? That like prettiness, that faith, those little things, enjoying those little moments, that little peace, right? So that's the typical imagery for the Rider Waite deck. And we'll start with the Halloween Tarot again. I'll put it back up here and show it, and as I talk about it. So very similar for the fact that we're on that edge of a cliff, right? So you see the clown has that foot up, and it looks like they're about to walk off that cliff at any second. They are also holding what kind of looks like a flower, kind of a ball in their hand. But it also looks like they're juggling at the same time, because we see the different balls up and kind of in the sky right there. So it almost looks like they're juggling while they're about to walk off a cliff, and that's what their focus is on, right? So we see that same bag imagery down in that bottom right-hand corner. And what's interesting in the Halloween Tarot, so we see this little black cat in the left-hand side, right? This black cat is in every single card in the Halloween Tarot, but it's kind of replacing that little white dog and the original Rider Waite imagery with this black cat, but that black cat's the one we're like, hey, I'm looking over the edge of this cliff here. I'm seeing what's at the bottom here, paying attention. The moon has a face in here, which I think is interesting, and is looking at it, and it's also nighttime versus in the Rider Waite imagery, it's daytime. So that's a little bit of an interesting difference there, I think. Okay, so now we'll go into the Light Seers Tarot. This one's definitely a little different. Something I really want to note for the clown real quick too is that it's also very gender neutral as well. So it's the guess that it's probably a young man in the Rider Waite imagery, and the clown, you would guess maybe a masculine figure, but it could be very neutral as well. It's just a clown, right? So for the Light Seers Tarot, we definitely have somebody that looks more female presenting. They have a staff in their hand, a crystal in the other, so that's interesting as well, something different. Also on the edge of that cliff, right? On the cliff at the bottom, it looks maybe like water or air. We're seeing that's kind of geometry with like a flower of life in there. Something I get off of this card too is that kind of like freedom, right? So that person's on the edge of the cliff and they're just feeling that air. It looks like there's wind sweeping through their hair. They're just standing there, just feeling that freedom that comes with being that full card, being in that place, right? So I think it's interesting that it's a crystal that feels a little bit more structured versus like a little flower, right? That we see in the original Rider Waite imagery and in the full card for the Halloween Tarot, because there's a flower in that little ball, right? So there's definitely a little bit more focus, I think, that comes with holding a crystal, potentially. But definitely still that cliff imagery there. The yellow, I think, is kind of more that happiness piece, that's that sun that's shining, that joy feeling. Very interesting one. So then we come to the Santa Muerte. So this one's very interesting. I love the Santa Muerte deck. It's a very intense deck. My friend that also does card readings doesn't like it a lot because it's a very mean deck. It's not the kindest, but with the Santa Muerte, all of it is skeletal. Skeleton is very gender neutral as well, which I think is interesting. If I were to guess, I'd say it's more masculine leaning, but you don't know kind of that for sure. We definitely see that like suitcase, bag, kind of traveling kit coming back in with the skeleton that's holding it. I see a guitar in there, a rifle, so maybe, or like the handle of one. So a little bit less naivety, I'd say, in this one, right? So this fool is going on their journey, but they seem to know a little bit more maybe than some of the other fools. We definitely got that like that little gift, right? That little treasure again. That's the crystal, that's the flower, and the other ones. This one's a butterfly, and the fool is just enjoying the little butterfly sitting on their finger. which I think is cute. What's interesting in this one, in comparison to the other ones, that kind of, it's not a nature background as much. On the Rider Waite, in the Halloween Tarot, we see those like mountains in the back, helping represent that journey into life, into that unknown. This one we have them in a cemetery, it looks like, with the different crosses in the back and tombstones almost. So that's a little different there. Not much clothing wise in terms of this card, right? For another Santa Muerte cards and different ones, we definitely see more clothing, more full set. This one's just wearing that kind of poncho over the top, not wearing very much, and just kind of going and really just packing up and leaving, right, out of the blue. So that's an interesting little piece to note. We've got an anchor, what looks like an anchor top that the skeleton has in their bag, the full. So that's interesting too. So that definitely leans, I think, more into the interpretation that this is a fool maybe on that's been through the journey, right? This would be like a 22 versus a 0 card potentially. This is not a first timer for starting a new adventure, for starting a new beginning, going on a journey, right? They have some weight behind them, they have some knowledge, some literal baggage that they're carrying. And that's a really interesting, different interpretation for the Santa Muerte. Last card that I pulled is the Wild Unknown. Definitely a lot more animal imagery in the Wild Unknown deck. We see a little bird that's about to fly off, or at least we hope they're going to fly, right? That's the hope. So that cliff imagery is replaced by the branch, but we know that that branch is high up in the air because it's a bird. They only have 1 foot on that branch, and the other one's stepping off. We've got more of that like little treasure, little joys in life with some of that flowers, those flowers around the bird there. We got more of that kind of like sun imagery coming in with the colors on the back with that yellow and orange. But this one, I feel like the Wild Unknown kind of really drills down to the basic meanings. There's not as much to symbology to interpret from it. It's just very like, this is what it is, but it's in depth at the same time, right? If that makes sense. So yeah, little young bird about to step off, and whether or not they fall or fly is going to be up to them, right? So not as much to interpret in this one for the full card. So some of the consistent imagery and that I've seen across all the cards that I had been written down, kind of want to talk about. We have the cliff imagery, right? So we have the cliff representing that leap into the unknown. That's kind of cautionary tale, but also like not knowing what's at the bottom, right? So you're going to walk off a cliff, and you don't know how far down it goes, if you're going to get hurt, if you're going to fly in the case of the bird, if it's something that's going to be worth the journey, right? You don't know until you start that journey, which is interesting. What I was referring to as those little things, or those little joys, right? So the flower, the crystal, in those cases, finding happiness anywhere you go, right? You can see a little flower popping through the sidewalk, right? And that brings that little bit of joy to your life. That seems to be a consistent imagery in a lot of the full cards that I've looked at. So again, with the void, that cliff, so there's the cliff itself, and that's on that precipice, right? And then you have the void and what's underneath and what you're jumping into. So we don't know what's at the bottom. We don't know what's at the bottom of any of these cliffs. We don't know what's at the bottom in the case of the Light Seers Tarot, in that like what looks like water potentially, or air, but has that kind of flower imagery. We don't know what's in there. There's unlimited potential in there. There's good things, bad things, and miracles all the same, right? So that's an interesting concept as well. And last bit, kind of some of those more important symbols and imagery that I've thought about is kind of the young male imagery, or like more gender neutral, right? So it's showing that youth, showing that naivety, that person before life gets to them, life teaches them things, right? So in the case, it's like, okay, this person can be of male or female energy. We don't know For the wild unknown, it's a bird, so it doesn't have that same kind of connotation, right? So it could be anybody, and I think that's a really important representation, especially in tarot and the arcana, for a person going on a journey. It's not a male or a female, it's just a person and living their life. So let's gather them up here. So I think out of all of them, the Santa Muerte is probably the most different. Again, where I was talking with the different things in the skeleton's travel bag here, there's this fool feels like they have been on a journey already and are choosing to go on another one, and have still able to have that full energy that they had from the first time, with just a little bit more knowledge behind them. I think that's really interesting difference there. So representations I attribute to the full cards. If I had to pick a person, I thought about this, and it'd be probably Jaskier from The Witcher, and more so like fandom Jaskier, TV show Jaskier from versus like Dandelion book Jaskier. Just based on my knowledge, he is really young when he starts out on his journey, right? It's like fresh adult. He's playing in a tavern and decides to follow this witcher out of nowhere, right? And go on this adventure. He has no clue what's going on. He doesn't know if he's going to be helpful or hindrance. He doesn't really care at the same time. So there's that like ignorance there, but very joyful and youthful and fun, right? So, and living in the present moment. I think that's a big one for the full card. So because the full card represents kind of that journey as well, we get that wisdom. And I think that's what the Tarot Muerte card, the Santa Muerte card shows, is that wisdom and coming full circle, right? And going on a journey again. So you have that youth, you have that wisdom of going on a journey and still having it, that youthful energy. Other pieces and meanings I've given this card would be like a spiritual transformation, fantasy, dreaming. I think spiritual transformation is a big one for sure, because it's that leap into the unknown is really important, right? You can have that in anything in your life, taking a new job, moving to a new place, getting into a new relationship. That's all full energy, right? In case of the spiritual transformation, though, there's so much more to it because you don't have an idea what to expect at all, potentially. I think that's a big one. So there's that adapting to change, and I think it's personal growth. Those are big pieces. Inner child. I think that's a big representation as well. And I like that I wrote this right here. So it's no going back, only way us forward. So with the cliff energy and the void energy that the full card has, I think that's a big deal, right? That's a big piece of it, because once you go step off that cliff, you can't go back. In case of the bird, maybe, right, from the wild unknown, because if they're flying, you could potentially fly up to the top of the cliff. But for us humans, right, if we step off a cliff, we're not going to be able to get back up on that cliff. At least not easily, and it's hard to go back in that case, right? You wouldn't want to go back because you've already changed where you are. You got on a big journey at that point. So, okay, so now let's get into reversals. Reversals can be read in tarot in two different ways generally. So you can have the meaning of the card and read it as the complete opposite of what the card means. Or the other way to do it is a overabundance or overdone energy for what the card already represents. Too much of that energy, too much full energy, and how that switches into bad energy at that point, or negative. So you have it like complete opposite or overdone. So in the case of opposite of the full energy, you can be too stagnant, not present in your life. You can have too much routine, not willing to take a chance, right? Not being scared of that leap of faith. So that's where that stagnant energy comes from, being stuck because you're not willing to move forward into a new opportunity, a new chance that you have in life. In the case of being too much full energy or overdoing it. You can have, in terms of reversals, you can have carelessness, I think, being purposely ignorant. So there's that naivety there in the Fool card, but in this case, choosing to be ignorant when you know better, being irresponsible, being selfish, ignoring the consequences. So you're on the edge of a cliff, right? And you don't know that that cliff's coming, and you're purposely not looking down because you know it's just going to happen, right? And then maybe blaming others for the fact that you walked off a cliff, blaming the dog in this case in the original Rider Waite for the fact that you walked off a cliff when you were the one not paying attention, ignoring those consequences. In terms of excess like naivety from the full energy, you can be taken advantage of. There's a lack of maturity there, being immature, being reckless, being impulsive maybe. I think those are all pieces that come from the Fool card being in reverse, in this case, and being overdone. Too much of that Fool energy. So the Fool card's a fun one. I think it's started the journey, right? It's that leap of faith, that start of a new part of your life, a new chapter. It can be scary for sure, standing on the edge of that cliff, but taking that leap of faith is the point at the same time, right? And moving forward, moving into the new thing. Because you don't know what's going to happen. There's always going to be the bad with the good, but hopefully with that taking a leap of faith, you have more good and you learn from things, and then you can come full circle and not be as scared when you go on the new journey and you're standing on the edge of a new cliff, right? I think those are all important factors in the Fool card. Yeah. So that's all I got for ya. I'm really excited to do the series. I think it's going to help me a lot, and I hope it helps everybody else as well, to just really learn tarot and really figure out what it means to you, and then how to potentially interpret it in different decks, because each artist has their own representation or their own thoughts for what everything means, right? The cards all read a little bit differently. So there, I showed you 4 different cards from four different decks, and there's that same base meaning, but they're, depending on how the artist interpreted it, there's different meanings there as well, and that's different from the original Rider Waite, and I think that's a really cool thing to look at. So thank you all so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Give it a like if you did, comment and subscribe as well. That'll help me out a lot if you do, and I will see you guys in another video. Have a good rest of your day, everyone.